Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Ben Lake. You're on Why We Serve with me, as always, your host. Um, we're still getting going at this. So, in the past episodes, I've had a few hiccups, so I apologize. Hopefully, you can actually hear me today on the mic and stuff. Today, I brought in my guest, Ryan Struemph. He is also kind of like Vince, one of my childhood friends, and known him forever. One of the deciding factors for me actually to join was his experience through it, and just his journey. So Ryan, hello, welcome
What's
to the
going
podcast.
on? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Trying just gotta keep this thing rolling. I appreciate you coming on. Um, like all we're gonna do today, it's essentially the same thing I did with Vince. We're gonna go over a little bit about Ryan, where he grew up, um, what led to him kind of joining up in the military, um, getting through that. Basically AIT again, that versus regular army. He was actually in the army. Sorry, I guess I didn't go over that. He was in the army for what, 5 years?
Yes,
Yeah.
5 years.
Okay.
And then 4 of IRR.
Oh yeah, I forgot you're still yeah. So there's that, and then um, getting out ultimately. He's been out for a good how many years now?
I got out of active duty in 2016, and then IRR ended in 2020. So I guess now going on 3 years completely
Yeah.
out.
Okay. So um, yeah, we're just gonna go over all that stuff, and obviously, I'm just trying to understand why he joined up, and then um, the whole process through this thing we all done called the military. Um, so Ryan, again, welcome. Let's go over just tell us a little bit about yourself, where you grew up, what was going on, and then kind of the lead up into you joining up into the army.
So yeah, I was born and raised here in Vienna. Um, Started out with a single mom, and then she met my stepdad a few years down the road, and then after that we were a family from then on out. Basically stayed in Vienna my entire life, never left. Did preschool, elementary, middle school, and high school through Vienna. Never really left it at all unless I was playing sports. Then we would go out of town or out of state or whatnot. Typical Vienna lifestyle, small town. Lived for the Friday nights of sports and whatnot, and then be once I got older into high school, kind of had a little party phase, like all of us did, and then graduated in 2011, and then after that, my whole goal was to try to make it in sports, but I was good enough, but not good enough to make it at the college level. So
Yeah, I remember. I just to interject a little bit. I remember for those listening, Ryan was a very obviously we're not at the level here in this town. Just our genetics are not what they are for these, you know, these giant schools. But Ryan was pretty decent at most sports. Played basketball, did a little track, not much, and then he also did basketball. You got a couple,
baseball too.
yeah, baseball too.
Track was mainly just to stay in shape and whatnot. I mainly did it just to stay in shape for baseball and whatnot. But
Yeah,
I ended up being pretty good mainly through I did the 4x8 relay and the 4x4 relay and whatnot, which is team based, which was more my suit because of basketball and baseball. And we went to state 4 years in a row for it. I mean, I got carried through the first 3 years of it, and then the fourth years I was the anchor of it, and we did all right. I mean, Vienna's disadvantage is that it's a small school and that
you don't get looked at by other
you don't get
people.
looked at. The only place you could really get looked at is Lincoln or maybe Columbia College, but those are D3 schools and you're not going to make anything out of it.
Yeah, I kind of want to push that to people because I'm sure a lot of people in those small towns can relate that. Um, you know, we talk about opportunity and what people had the chance to do. I really think if a lot of these guys, people like Ryan, some other dudes, I think even Vince, if we were in those bigger schools with number one better programs and stuff, not me, okay, not I'm not talking about me because I was to maybe do better, even better than their max potential was. Um, but unfortunately, we grew up here. It is what it is. So, you got up there at the end of high school. Those offers really weren't the ones that you got. I remember you got a few, but they just weren't
Yeah,
us, right?
I got a few. They were they weren't full rides. They were, hey, come out, try out, and if you make it, you might get one, you might not. You might be a paid to you pay your way into play kind of thing. And I thought about it, and I went to a couple tryouts, and it was you were at a disadvantage at the start because you were trying to make the team going against guys that already made it, so they were more focused on the guys that already made it. So you were at a disadvantage. But the biggest issue, not so much that it was because Vienna was so small, is back then traveling ball wasn't a thing really. It was hard to, it
Yes.
was hard to get it was hard to find it because it wasn't
Hmm.
advertised as much like it is now. Now it's all these big athletes that are going to college now, their main priority is travel ball. That's where they get all their exposure and whatnot. And so I think a lot of the athletes now in these small towns, if you get on a traveling bowl, you're at equal playing field now. And then high school for a lot of those guys now is just like spring training. You just
100%.
you just work on your craft, and then once travel ball hits, you're good to go.
Because Ryan knows my wife very well, Danielle. She grew up in Phoenix,
Yeah.
and that was her like life was playing travel ball. Of what your high school career was. So yeah, but we look at all that. There's that. You were out of high school for like what, a year or two, or
So I graduated in May, like we all did, and then I didn't really have a plan. I kind of put all my chips on the table for sports, and then when that backfired, my parents looked at me like, "Well, what are you going to do now?" And I was like, "Well, shit, I don't know." So I started doing odd end jobs and whatnot, just to get by and try to figure shit out. And then about Vince came back from, I think it was like his first Navy leave, or he came back for something, and he came to the gym when I was working out, and he was talking to me about the military. He's like, "Yeah, man, it's not bad. It's pretty easy. I got all this." He had like money and stuff, which I mean, working odd ends jobs for me, I was
yeah.
just living cash to cash,
And dude,
just getting by.
I think growing up, all three of us, I think we definitely did not see a lot of money. So you see this steady check coming in, and you're just like, how the hell is this dude affording all this stuff? And then
Yeah,
you go out,
I mean,
we're buying cases of beer, and then you're broke for the night. This dude's
yeah,
blowing money like
pretty
it's
much. Like as soon
nothing.
as I'd cash my check by Sunday morning, it's all gone.
Yeah, it's
And
not fun. And then you see that, and you're like, damn, that'd be all right. Not for that, not hard work. I also, um, I want to point out to people, you were talking about the jobs you had. Do you remember where you worked at all?
uh, I started out. Let's see. First one, I was doing roofing. I was mainly the guy that stood on the ground and picked up nails and shit.
Mm-hmm.
So that really sucked. And then uh, I did a little bit of Hilky's Ice, which is like a little local ice company, bagging ice on pallets and loading them in trucks and stuff. And then worked at a restaurant as a cook for a while. And that was the last one I had.
Yeah, it was just like, minimum wage, tough jobs, not so much the cooking. I mean, cooking's still kind of rough, but the other ones, it's these physical jobs. I want to point out to the kids joining and the ones that are in. would you say, because I it did for me, but I don't know if it did the same for everybody else. Do you think it helped your mental status going into the military? Like when you got to basic, obviously, or your new when you got to your first duty station and you had to work. Do you think it helps you or hurts you?
I think I'm a big believer on you need to have somewhat you need to work a job, whether it's like I've noticed a lot of people that don't work through high school, they hit the real world and they kind of fall flat on their face because they don't have any experience. I've found that with me doing these odd end jobs and whatnot, that it helped a lot. That I just kind of I failed enough when I was young with these odd end jobs that didn't really mean nothing, that I had no intentions on. I didn't plan on being a cook for my entire life. So when I failed, it wasn't that big of a deal. And it helped me like learn, like, hey, don't fuck this up and whatnot. And it
Yeah,
helped a lot.
I think it's so little tiny room, but like I think it's so important for people to have some type of uh, have a shitty job. Load pallets, work in a grocery store, go get yelled at by a boss, do something that's hard that you realize, oh, I really gotta like actually work at it to succeed in life, or I am gonna be doing these shit jobs for the rest of my life. Prime example here in this town, Quaker. Um, I hate to, I bring it up every time, but it's like the
Well,
the it's
Like
hard.
Vince said, most of the people around here, like if you don't go to college, a lot of them go to Quaker because it's right down the road
Yeah,
and they're always hiring.
and it's money. It's
Yeah.
money in the pocket. You go to work, and you're done. But for the people that know they are capable of more and don't want that rigorous life their entire life, like it really wakes you up to like, dude, I gotta get my shit together and I gotta go do something.
I think it helps too is like you go through these shitty jobs and then once you find a really good one, it helps you appreciate like this is a good
Yes.
job because like a lot of these people that I've been around, like they never worked any other job in their life and then they get this really good job and they have one bad day and they think I need something different.
Mm-hmm.
This sucks. And I think if you have more experience when you're younger and you get that good job, you realize, hey, it could be worse.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, so yeah, you're at that point, and then you're like, hey, you know what? Put me in, coach. I'm ready to play. Give me that green suit. Give me the pay.
Yeah, so
But
how that went down is after me and Vince had we talked for a while about it and whatnot, and I thought about it for a while, and I went, I'll be honest, like my whole intentions when I decided, hey, I'm gonna go this military route was I was gonna be my one contract and done. I had no intentions of staying in any longer. Basically, I did it to learn a skill and get out.
yeah,
So when I went to the recruiter, a lot of you will find out a lot of these recruiters give you the wraparound of it's this is great, this is great, yada 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 yada, and then they push for they call it needs of the army. They'll push that heavily, and when I went in there, they really pushed for infantry. They just kept pushing like, oh, if you do infantry you can go to basic the next day. And I was like, I don't want to do that. I want to learn a trade because I come from a farming background, outdoorsy kind of thing, run tractors and shit like that. So like I kind of like that. I mean, sitting in a piece of equipment all day and then go home and it's not too bad. And they kept giving me the wraparound. And then finally in November, I was at the point where I was like, this guy's just pulling my leg. I don't think I want to do this anymore. And then me and Vince just happenstance, Vince called me. He's like, "Hey, how's it going? Have you decided yet?" I was like, "He keeps giving me the wraparound. Like, I don't want. I don't want to be infantry. I don't want to do these odd end jobs that don't transition into the real world, because that was my end goal. Is I want something that transitions when I get out to where I can hit the ground running and make a lot of money.
Yeah, a lot of people I think have a misconception of why some people join, which a lot of people join to get that skill. You know, they're trying to get work experience through a good work experience in the army, which is like certifying you. Um, Not everybody's built to be an infantryman. You got to have a mentality going into those jobs, those combat MOSs of like, you know what, for the next 5 to 6 years, I'm not doing anything but training to stack bodies. Like a lot of us just are like, you know what, I'm going to serve my country, but I would like a something out of it. Like I want to be able to go do something if I get out after this little time.
Yeah, and I looked at the infantry deal, and it's nothing against them. I'm not here to bash them or anything, but every job that I looked at in the military, I looked at how it transitions out. And an infantryman transitioning out, if you don't stay in, you're just as qualified as some 15-year-old. In most jobs, you're as qualified as a high school graduate, other than like law enforcement or security guards and whatnot. Then that you're good. But other than that, anything else, you don't really, other than you're a veteran or
Yeah,
whatnot, you're
and
not, you
and
don't
you
have
get
any other
leadership
pull.
skills. I think the big thing overlooked is leadership skills if you make that sergeant rank and stuff. But like that only translates to a couple different areas. That is not a very large.
Yeah, it helps, but a lot of jobs that hire you, they're not going to give you a leadership job
True,
starting out.
true,
So it really,
because you got to have the
it's
skills to
it's
back it
yeah,
up.
it's just a block on your resume that might over that they might look at, but they're not going to give you. They're going to start you out at entry level job, just like this kid out of high school.
And I don't. I think we're going down not a rabbit hole, but we're talking. Um, we I know I do. I think I'm sure Ryan did when he was in and stuff. We both know infantry, Cap Scout, tankers, and all these guys, right? Um, they're some of the first guys to tell you this stuff. We're not saying anything new. We're just letting people know, hey, you know, this is kind of what those guys, this is what happens to them when they get out. I salute them for doing a really hard job because it's one of the roughest jobs you can have in the army, but it's there's a big pride thing that goes with it. But we're just talking about outside translation. That's all.
Yeah, most of them that I've talked to, like infantry guys, during the time that I in, a lot of them are like, it went one or two ways. They said, I planned on doing this for 20 years and getting out, or the other side was the recruiter just kept pushing, pushing, and I wanted to get out of the situation that I was in the civilian world. I wanted to get out of it as quick as I could, and this was the quickest way into it. And then a lot of them say, well, I'm going to work to reclass and whatnot later on down the road,
Mm.
which is fine. But like you said, we kind of got down a rabbit hole. So once I did some more research and I found what I wanted to do, which was a 12 November, which is a horizontal construction engineer, which is basically a heavy equipment operator. And it came down to that. And then I also had on the back of my mind, well, I could go to Lynn Tech, which is now State Tech, which is this trade school. And the biggest selling point the Army had to me is that I'd get paid to school. They'd basically be paying me to learn how to run equipment, and the AIT was only 10 weeks long compared to 2-3 years in school, and then I'd have student loans and whatnot. So that's when I decided, okay, I'm just gonna do the army thing. And it sounds kind of fucked up. I was like, oh, I've heard this all the time when I got out and stuff. You just use the army, yada yada yada. And I was like, well, at the end of the day, I mean, the army uses us to get what they want, so why not kind of return the favor a little
Yes,
bit?
it's 100% a transactory relation. state.
My mentality was, let's get this shit over with and get through it. I my whole intentions when I went into basic is like, I want no one to know who I am. I don't want any attention drawn to me. So went in. Luckily, I got lucky and got put in second squad, so I wasn't up front or anything. So the whole time I went through like PT tests, weapons quals, dry ranges, all this other stuff, I did the bare minimum to just to get by.
Interesting.
That way I didn't stand out. I
Mhm.
didn't.
Yeah, because there's a thing when you go in. I mean, it has changed a little, but the ones that are stellars and the ones that are dark bags, they get hyper focused by the drills. But if you keep your head down and you just kind of do serve. I'm like, no, it's still a job. Like it's not your entire life. And some people aren't like perfect at everything. Like not every one of us can be GI Joe. So good on you for being honest about like getting through the freaking situation with as little pain as possible. Because like that, a lot of people do it. Not a lot of people talk about it, but a lot of people do it.
Oh, I was straight up with my battle buddies and stuff, because I mean, when you're in basic, you have nothing to do but talk when you get time. So we'd all talk about each other, like, oh, why'd you join, why this, and I'd hear all these stories about, oh, my daddy served and I want to follow in his footsteps, and I want to make a difference, yada yada yada. And then they get to me and I just flat out tell them I did this for a trade. And then they kind of, I got a lot of backlash from it and whatnot, and this and that. But I mean, the army wasn't my goal. My goal was to learn a trade and then get out and make a lot of money. And as a 19, 20-year old, I mean, that sounded really good. Like, hey, just get through this suck and then make a lot of money when you get out. So there was a lot of people that were looking at me negatively and whatnot, and I didn't really care because I was like, I mean, basic. I'm only going to see you for this little while, and then we're going to go our separate ways. And I don't really give two shits about you. Nothing against them, but I was just there to get by and get a paycheck and learn a skill.
I
That's
think I
basically
think
all it was.
yeah, I think a lot of military people know too. For those that I mean, this is gonna we're talking inside baseball right now a little bit, but like
Yeah, I mean, in basic, nobody's really said that other than me. But then years down the line, as years went on, some of the guys that I went to basic with, they messaged me randomly on Facebook and be like, "You were right. Like your mentality going into that is what I should have done. I shouldn't have jumped in the boat because in basic we had people of different MOSs, infantry guys,
yeah,
all
yeah,
this and
yeah.
that, and a lot of them would message me years down the line and be like, I should have done it differently. I should have done it like you. Like I went in all gung ho and then the army broke me down to where I just hated it. And I should have had a backup plan. And that comes back to high school where I learned when I put all my chips into one thing and then didn't have a backup plan,
Yeah, because some
it
kids do that with the
backfired.
military.
So went through basic and whatnot, bare minimum, just tried to be a ghost. And a funny story, I finally got caught. It was graduation practice, and you know how you sit down and then they call up your row. You go up to the front of the stage and then take a step forward and say private so and so from whatever state you're from.
Yeah, you're showing up for people not that never been to one. You're literally getting on a stage on your last day of basic or AIT. You get on a stage, you yell your name and where you're from.
So it was rehearsal and whatnot the day before graduation. And then our roll gets up and we go up to stage and then people go in front and go in front. And then I don't know what hit in my head. There's the next person went to me and then in the back of my head I was like, oh shit. They're they're gonna figure out who I am. But I'm finally gonna get caught. And sure as shit I did. I stood up, Private Struemph from Missouri, and this one female drill sergeant goes, who the fuck are you? And I was like, oh fuck. I got caught.
I've done that.
I made
I've done it so many times.
I made it so far in the last day, and they caught up with me. They smoked the living dog shit out of me. For like 30, 40 minutes, just smoked they didn't even believe that I was in that unit. Yeah. They're like, where the fuck did you come from? This and that. I was like, oh God, I almost made it.
Dude, that's awesome because I have about 120 people in my class. And by the end, I pride myself. I usually can remember a lot of names, but like it'll be the last day of graduation or family day or whatever, and this like some kid never fails. Like one or two walk up. I'm like, who the fuck are you? And they're like, you destroyed me on the first day I was here. And I'm like, I haven't seen you. Glitch in the matrix or something. It's weird, but I get it. That's good though that you got through and then you didn't. Better that than throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, I got through it. I mean, I don't know. I don't really know how basic and stuff is nowadays, but I mean, back then it was hard, but it wasn't as hard as like the '90s and '80s where they just beat the piss out of you. But I mean, I'll admit that the Army basics whole idea is to tear you down and change you into what they want. I mean, it fucked with me for a little while. I mean, it sucked. It sucked.
Because I knew you right after you. You know, I wasn't in yet, and then I see you and Vince, especially like both of you. We come hang out, and I'm like, these dudes are kind of acting weird. Like it's not them.
Yeah, it. I don't really know how to explain it. It kind of changed me a little bit, but still in the back of my mind, I was like, it's just got to get through it. Just got to get through it. I mean, it kind of changed my mannerisms, kind of changed the way I conducted myself and whatnot, but it still didn't change my end goal or anything. It kind of changed me personality wise. But then after basic, I know you said now that they have drills and AIT and stuff. When I went for 12 November, we just had basic NCOs that were in charge of us.
No, same way.
They called them cadre basically, and it's mainly E5s, a couple E6s, whatever. And then the schooling, there was like one or two, and then the rest were civilians. So, and that was it was 8 weeks of running equipment, and then the first week was TAMS, which was basically learning how to look at like dirt plans, grades, slopes, shit like that.
Yeah.
And then each week was a different piece of equipment. So like one week you'd be running a dozer. That first day you come in, it was mainly death by fucking PowerPoints of everything about the machine and whatnot. I want to
hear the rest of the story, Ryan. We're at our break right now.
Okay.
So, guys, we're gonna just take a short little break, and then we'll be right back with Ryan Struemph. Not finishing up, but just that part of the saga. We'll finish that up, and we'll be right back. Okay.
So yeah, with AIT, that's where my focus for the Army grew more because that was where I was planning on for the civilian world, where I had to learn how to run these pieces of equipment well and within a week so that when I go to the civilian world, I'll have a faster track to getting a higher paying job and starting out higher and whatnot. So AIT was a lot different than basic. I was a lot more focused. The army side, I didn't give two shits about. I mainly just cared about the school part of it. So I still played the game of being a good soldier and whatnot, which a lot of people would think sounds bad, but I didn't care. I just all I cared about was the schooling, graduate, and then go off into the real army world. And a lot of people ask me, they're like, "Well, why'd you go active duty and not do like the reserves or the National Guard?" And I just told them, I was like, "Well, the reserves and National Guard, once you graduate AIT, you go home." And I was like, "Well, I wanted to do active duty so I could hone in my skills more before I got out. And also it looks good on a resume that you were active duty and you have all this other skills that you learned or did. I ran machines more with active duty instead of just that 1 week of AIT for each equipment. I'll have years more experience when I get out and also a full paycheck the whole time."
Yeah, I think there's very few jobs actually in the army that you get this job like pretty common
Yeah,
flex.
so like each piece of equipment, the first day you do your PowerPoints, you go over the manual of it, which shows like all the where your transmission oil, where your hydraulic oil, coolant oil, basic checks on it, where your grease points are, and then basic safety measures and whatnot, and then how to run the machine. So you do that for the first day, and then about halfway through it, you go outside, you do a walk around of the machine, you PMCS it, your preventative maintenance checks and whatnot. So you like go through, you check the oils, you check your grease points, you check the wear and tear. Like if you're running a dozer, you check the wear and tear of the blades, make sure your lights work, all that stuff. And then Tuesday through Thursday is where you just get in the machine and run it. They have like a little task that you have to do. Like with the dozer, you had to cut down. I think it was like 4 foot down into the ground, and then build a ramp up, and then go down the ramp. So you do that for 4 days, and then Friday you test out. So the test out is basically doing what you did for those 4 days, and then once you test out and pass, that next week you go to the next piece of machinery and do it all over again. So it the week was good to get me an idea of how to run each piece of machinery, but the active duty side is where I really learned how to run the machines and run them for different situations and really hone in my skills. Because I mean, in the active duty side, doing a lot of these projects, like you sit in that machine for 12, 14 hours a day, you really learn the machine and you really find ways to get better and to get faster at it. Cause I mean, you're in the son of a bitch all day. So you got to figure out something. And the shitty part about the machines that we were running, of course, they didn't have radios and shit. And so I had to listen to music on my phone and stuff. But you really, that's all you do all day is just run machines all day long. If you have a project and whatnot.
I was gonna ask you like because I guess this is where it comes into play. Um, your motivation for joining, which was to get this certification and get out and do stuff through basic and AIT. How would you say it was? Like, did you maintain, or were there some points where you're just like, "What the hell am I doing here?" Or I'm like, "I love this. This is what I expected."
Basic, I hated every minute of it. I thought it was the stupidest decision of my life. Like, why did I do this? This is so dumb. Literally
It's not fun.
trying to have a trying to call my mom through a shitty ass payphone with a a card that doesn't work half the time, losing all my minutes because it doesn't work half the time, and then writing letters. I mean, letters.
Because I think I was probably the last group that really used a lot of letters.
Yeah, I guess now they get their phones and shit.
Yeah,
Lucky bastards.
You get so tired of writing letters. Even if you look forward to it, you're still like, I don't have the fucking energy to sit here.
The bad part about writing letters is when you got one back and you're sitting in the bay of basic and the drill sergeant says, "Oh, you got a letter," they'd smoke the dog piss out of you for it. So I didn't really write a lot of letters and whatnot, but basic, I didn't have it. I hated it. It was just embrace the suck and get through it.
Yeah.
And then AIT, I enjoyed it because it was the machinery part.
Mm-hmm.
And then getting to my unit and stuff, luckily I got Fort Leonard Wood, which was cool. I was like, okay, right down the road from home. Hell yeah.
Yeah, you were here for how many years?
Let's see. It was about 2. So I get out, go to my unit. We end up deploying to Kuwait and shit, which ain't really deployment, whatever, but still. Went over there. That's when I really ran machines because that's all we did there was run machines.
Yeah, they had you just moving shit around.
We were building pads for new buildings. We were digging out old quarries, and so I was running machines all day, every day, and that's where I really honed in my skills and really enjoyed the Army part of it. Mm-hmm. Because deployments and stuff, once you're out of garrison, the Army's not that bad. Garrison, though, sucks. Garrison is dumb. But like deployments and stuff, the Army's a lot more laid back. Because, I mean, you can't be a dick to people that are away from their families and stuff for 9 months at a time because all you have is each other. So a lot of guys are a lot more relaxed because you have nowhere to go. You're stuck with each other. So you don't want to burn bridges with people because where are you going to go? You can only go so far. So did our little tour over there, which was all right.
How did you deal with that, like being gone for that long? Do you think you were fine the whole time, or do you think you struggled with it a little bit?
It didn't really bug me any at all. I mean, I Skyped some with my parents, but growing up, my household, I mean, my parents obviously loved me and whatnot, but we were kind of a family that didn't really show emotions all that much. It was just kind of, my parents groomed, because I have a brother and sister. I mean, the sister was obviously different, but me and my brother, my parents groomed us to be self-sufficient individuals, and they wanted us to realize that the real world is not cupcake and roses. Like, it's, the real world doesn't care about your feelings that much, that you got to go out there and get what you want and you can't be soft about it. So deploying and stuff, it didn't really bother me. I mean, I mean, obviously I was homesick because Kuwait fucking sucks, but I wasn't like all depressed, like, oh, I miss my mommy. I mean, obviously I missed them, but I didn't like cry about it. I just counted down the days till I got to go home, and then I was like, it's 1 year closer to getting out, yada yada yada.
Yeah, I think a lot of people don't.
Oh yeah, when I chose 12 November, I thought, and then I got stationed in Fort Leonard Wood. I was like, oh shit, what are they gonna do with a heavy equipment operator? They ain't gonna send them nowhere. You're gonna do piddly shit around the plant and whatnot, or around the base. And I was like, okay, so this be a cakewalk. I'll do my 4 years at Leonard Wood, go home every weekend or every night if I wanted to, and be cush. But of course, fucking not. The Army finds a way to fuck you somehow. And so did that, came back, and there was rumors that Fort Leonard Wood was going to turn just into a training base. So there was rumors going around that they were going to disband units and whatnot.
Well, for those that don't know, too, I try to cover that. People know Fort Leonard Wood, or if you're in, it's typically it's like 90% training base because you have a little small unit, but there's hardly anything. When Ryan came through, it was like 2014, 2015, or no,
No, it was
before that.
2012.
Yeah. So back then they had a couple more units here that were active duty units, actually doing training, preparing for deployments, doing whatever.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in, our battalion had 4 engineer companies. They had the Novembers, the vertical unit, and the boat guys and whatnot. And then they slowly, so we get back, and the rumors go that they're disbanding, and they start. So people start getting orders. I Active duty, I treated it a little bit differently because I realized the higher rank you are, the more money you get. So I was like, if I'm going to be stuck in this for,
Ryan learned that late.
yeah, I learned it.
Most are checking it.
Because I just didn't really care that much. I mean, going in as a fuzzy, you automatically get E2 after 6 months or whatever, and then you get E3 after 18, whatnot. But then I learned that you could get waivers. So as an E2, I learned you could get an early waiver for E3, and you got to do.
I don't know if I went over this. I think I went over it before, but if you don't know, the what we're talking about, E1 through E9, those are pay grades,
which looks stupid, by the
it
way.
was off.
So yeah, I learned about those waivers and whatnot. So I was like, okay. And mainly for that low of ranking, it mainly comes down to PT and weapons quals. So
PT, by the way, sorry, I gotta keep going with random stuff. PT, test every 6 months typically, or twice a year. Um, Back then it was 2 mile run, 2 minutes of push-ups, and 2 minutes of sit-ups. Now it's a little different. And then weapons qual back then, weapons qualification, you would take your M4, M16 to the range with pop-up targets or paper, and you would try to shoot. You'd have 40 rounds.
yeah, so I realized with those two, if you score well on them, you get you. It looks a lot better. That's basically what the first sergeant looks at for giving waivers, because I think back then each unit got so many waivers. So and you're competing with all these other guys. So when it came to that, my motivation changed to okay, so PT and weapons call is what's important. So I started really focusing on that. And so when it came to that, I went above and beyond, completely opposite than how I was in basic, where I just did the bare minimum. In my unit, I went for the max just so I could, so it looked better for me to get early promotions. So I did all that, got early promotions and whatnot. And I got lucky one time. I got a 300 and also got a 40 out of 40 on my weapons qual, so I got expert.
That's the highest scores you can get
Yeah.
for it.
So I got that, and it kind of backfired my plans doing that. I obviously got promoted and stuff, got up to E4, and because of my weapons qual and my PT score, I got selected to be the base commander's driver, which was basically I drive him around wherever he wants to go. So, because the unit obviously was disbanding, they were kind of shipping guys off to different places. So, I do that and I get in there and they're like, yeah, we'll pull your social and stuff. So when they disband your unit, you don't get pulled somewhere else. I was like, okay, cool. And of course, my luck, because that was a cush job. Basically, I went into the office around 8 or 9, and if the commander didn't have anything going on, I went home. Didn't really have to do PT, didn't have to do the day to day life of soldiers or whatnot. But of course, my luck, they don't pull my social, and I get pulled for orders to go to Fort Hood, Texas.
Yeah, that's not fun. Some people like it. Some people like
I liked it.
but I can't. But
I
I
like
also would
Texas.
just like to say, I um,
See, he hates us because he ain't
no.
us.
Here's the thing.
But yeah, so of course I get orders pulled to go to Fort Hood. So go down there and go through reception and whatnot and get put in my unit. And of course, the unit I get put into is got orders to go to Africa when the Ebola breakout happened. So I was like, oh, that's just fucking great. And I got put into, I was still a heavy equipment operator, but I was in a mainly vertical unit, which are like basically carpenters and whatnot. So we go to Africa for, I think it was like 5 months or whatever, and do that whole spiel. And that was awful. It was the worst experience of my life, sleeping in little bug net tents and shit. And then you come home and they send you off to quarantine in North Fort Hood, which is basically a bunch of buildings that you sleep in, and it's fenced off like a prison. So we had to stay there for 2 weeks and go through quarantine.
Real quick, how would you say your motivation was going through that one? Because Kuwait is a way different ball game than Africa.
That one, I didn't run equipment. I basically we built these. They call them ETU sites, which is basically a quickly erected hospital for the locals.
It's a humanitarian mission.
Yeah, that's basically all it was. And my motivation for that was zero. I hated every minute of it. It was the worst experience of my life. And I was like, what the fuck am I doing?
Because that's like legit, a lot of people think everywhere's the same. You're done.
Oh, yeah. When we first got to Africa, it was an old police training site. There's a couple hard buildings that were just abandoned, gutted out, just nasty. And we were staying in tents. And there was a little village down the hill from us, and we had to build stinking janky ass fences to keep the kids out because the kids would get in there and steal our food and stuff. So we're basically erecting a base with sticks and rope, putting it all together. So we went. That was just horrible. I was like, I just,
Sounds
I just kept thinking. I was like, okay, I'm 1 year closer to getting out. Just
yeah, and
one
you're
year,
just counting the days to go
one year
home.
closer to getting out. And so we get back from that, and I get sent to another unit, and it's for the bridge crew guys. I don't. It's like 12 Charlie or something like
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
Bridge. But I was in a unit. I was in a side unit called EQ, which is basically the office people, and then there was a squad of like 13 or 14 of us that were heavy equipment operators, because with the Charlies, mainly the heavy equipment operators job was like, if there's not a boat ramp, we make one for them so they can get their boats in and then put their little bridge flop out bullshit
oh
across
yeah, yeah,
there
yeah.
and whatnot.
These guys make the bridge guys. They usually make bridges across the
Yeah.
water, so
Yeah.
they have a whole mechanism. But sometimes I guess they're not
Yeah.
able to do
If
that.
they're not able to, we go through, we make a boat ramp for them so they can get their shit in.
Yeah.
So I get to that, and at this point, I have probably just under 18 months left, I think, at
Oh,
that
okay.
point. So I was like, okay, just gonna.
I think a lot of people hear that and they're like, "That's a year and a half. That's long."
But
It's really not. Yeah,
when you
when you're
go
getting
through
out,
the
you're like,
shit,
"That's
it's
gonna."
like
Yeah, and
I'm so close.
your last year is kind of cakewalk.
So I get to this new unit, and my squad leader is he's a d bag. He's one of, if you're in the military, he's one of these guys that thinks his shit don't stink and that the army is the greatest organization in the entire world. And if you're not hua hua gung ho Mr. All American, Captain America here, you're a dirtbag and this not. And he learned real quick that I was not that guy. So he I'm part of, if you all know this, I was part of the E4 mafia. I was like one of the ringleaders of the don't give a shit, put it on a private and we'll just skate by. Took a lot of smoke breaks. A lot of smoke breaks. So
All right.
so he got wind of this, because he got wind of it, and so he thought it'd be funny and to fuck with me, to make me go to the promotion board because I was obviously up for it and whatnot. And he thought it to make me look bad for wasting the army's time and wasting a body, quote unquote, a body for the army. He wanted me to go to the promotion board just to make me look stupid. So I got word of this from my team leader, and I was like, okay, I decided to use that as motivation to fuck with him. It wasn't for the right reasons as some people would think, but oh, you're going for promotion for E5. That should be all the motivation in the world. No, it's just make this guy look stupid for trying to make me look stupid.
Yeah, boards are kind of weird a lot of times. Well, you still need to go, and for those that don't understand, they're like, well, why wouldn't you just not go then? Well, that's punishable because you're not obeying a non-commissioned officer, and it turns into this whole
Oh, it goes
storm of
down a rabbit
emotions.
hole
Yeah.
of shittiness.
So like you still are just like Roger, you just go yes, but
Well, at first, when my team leader brought it up to me, I told him, fuck no, he can kick rocks. I ain't doing that. And then he told me the repercussions if I said no. And I was like, well, fuck. Okay. And
And then it sucks too on you because you don't want to look like a jackass because you have to go in there now. So you're like, I kind of have to
well,
not be a
well,
piece
yeah.
of
I
shit.
mean,
And then like,
my team leader was cool. Me and him were cool. He's like, he flat out told me, he's like, yeah, he's just doing this to make you look bad for, in his eyes, wasting the Army's time.
hold on, real quick. I guess I didn't go over that. We kind of skimmed it. A board is where you go before a bunch of high. So we're at the top end. A sergeant major is the highest, obviously, and then but they're on this little panel, right? There are the chairs and with a table in front of them. You have to like walk in. You have to address them. It's very formal. It's very serious, and but at the same time, they screw with your head and ask you a lot of these random questions that are hard to find questions. It's very. It'd be like if I gave you a book of 500 pages and I said I'm going to come up with 40 questions out of this book. I'm not going to tell you where they're at. You're going to go to this board in a week. Good luck.
The easiest way to kind of explain it for people that don't know, it's basically a job interview, but like say you're interviewing for a job for a company, but you are interviewing basically yourself, but you have to know the company's history. You got to know the ins and outs of the company and whatnot. So it's basically an interview, but you have to know everything about the company at the same time.
Would you say would you say that? Or?
Oh yeah, I'd say that about the board. I mean, I used a lot of things that I learned from going through the board in my interview for the job that I have now. But I mean, getting ready when my team leader told me that I was going to the board and whatnot, I was like, and told me that it was because the my squad leader wanted me to look dumb. I used that as motivation. I didn't let anyone know. I still was the same way that I was anytime. I was still a shitbag E4, whatever. But on the side, when I was in my barracks and stuff, I was studying. I was studying my ass off because all I wanted to do was to prove that squad leader wrong and make him look dumb instead of me. Which a lot of people say that's a horrible way to do it. But I
False
mean,
motivation. Motivation.
yeah,
Still trying to get it done.
I was like, I don't, because in my mind, I did not want to be an E5. To me, this is no knock against them. From my experience, an E5 to me was basically an underpaid babysitter that got blamed for anything a dumbass soldier did.
That's what me and Vince said, but in a nicer way.
Yeah.
We said it to where you're the hardest working person almost in the entire organization, and you're treated not great.
I mean, it sucks for him because you could have a shitty soldier do something so dumb,
Awful.
just
And
dumb,
you're
and you got your, and then you're getting yelled at by the first sergeant, like, why did you let that soldier do what he did? I don't know, because he's an idiot. How is that my fault? The Army gives you all these classes and all this other shit so you don't fuck up, and somebody still fucks up. How is that the E5's fault?
Personal accountability is only preached at.
So with the promotion board, I studied in my off time and went to the promotion board. You're obviously in your dress blues and whatnot, and go through the promotion board, and I killed it. I mean, I answered every question confidently and just aced it pretty much. Got my peace status, and then
That for those that means he's eligible to be a sergeant now. You just got to go to school and then make these things that are called points. But basically, he was just ready to become a sergeant at that point. That's when they say he is ready to be that rank.
yeah, so did all that and whatnot. So basically, I was just waiting on points, and then come to find out, of course, the Army gets me again. We get orders to go to Korea for 9 months. So went there. Korea wasn't bad. Did a little bit of operating, but it was mainly just it was pretty much the same as basic day to day life of a regular duty station.
Is this the 9 month rotation?
Yeah.
This kind of sucks because at that point you were at that when you got back, you're less than 9 months out.
Yeah. When I got back, I had 6 months left. So did that little 9 month tour deal, and I basically all that was is basically like a duty station. So we'd go to the motor pool, do all the stuff there, and then come back, and I'd go to the gym and whatnot, and just counted down the days till coming home. So we come home, and I basically had 6 months left till I got out. So that's when you go through ACAP and all that, which is basically transitioning out. You do a lot of classes. They show you how to write a resume, how to do job interviews, and it's a lot of paperwork stuff and doing a lot of checklist stuff of getting out. So, like, you go through medical, you go through CIF, which any of you who don't know, CIF sucks.
Yeah, that's your gear turn in, which you used a bunch, and then they want it perfectly clean.
And
It's
nothing's
fun.
ever
It's
clean.
fun.
It doesn't matter if you pay. I paid people to clean my stuff, professional cleaners, and somehow it still wasn't clean.
And you do that right, and then they kick it back. They call kicking it back, and they'll be like, okay. Complaints about CIF gear and like how it works, but it is what it is. Most of us at this point are just like, I just want to get out of here. So you're just trying to get it done.
And mine wasn't bad. The first one I went through, two things failed, but they were also pretty lenient because I had the uniforms before it changed. So when I when I got to Fort Hood, they were slowly integrating the whatever you call them
Yeah,
now.
so the old one Ryan's referencing is called the UCP, which is Universal Camo, that was pretty popular from about. That's what most people saw from probably 2008 to really like 2016 or 17, and then it started becoming this new thing called OCP, which is what is it?
It's basically like multicam,
Yeah,
but a little bit
yeah. I
different.
can't remember what. I'm sounding like a dirtbag. Real sorry, man. I can't remember what OCP stands for. Something camouflage pattern, but it's the one that looks like regular. What it's supposed to be like a green, black, uh, brown type mesh that looks like camouflage. So with what he's saying, you turn all that stuff in, they don't really care because it's old and they're phasing it out anyway.
Yeah, but they were still a little strict. So I had two things kicked back, and I was like, okay, I don't understand how this stuff didn't even pass. So I just went to a local pawn shop and searched around for stuff that was brand new.
Oh,
So
yeah.
so I just
Same.
so I
I think
just went
everybody's done it.
so
Trying to find that
I
shit
just
was
went
it.
and whatever was still in the package, I bought it. And it was only two things. I think it ended up costing me like $40.
Yeah.
I was hustling the
You're like, screw it.
I was
I'll
hustling
do
the
it.
pawn shop dealer just so I wouldn't have to pay that much. So I went in and I brought the receipt with me too because I was like, "There's no way these little CIF fucks are gonna fuck me out of this." So I brought it still in the package and handed it to them, and they just took it, and I cleared CIF. So I finished clearing up and everything, and then I scheduled and I went through ACAP and finished that all up. And that's the one thing that I will say. I mean, back then the army did pretty well was ACAP, because I mean that really helps a lot of people getting out, because you learn. I mean, a lot of people think it's easy to write a resume or it's easy to do an interview, but there's things that they teach you there that you wouldn't think would help you that really do, like
Yeah,
with resumes and stuff.
I would say that that is probably um, a lot of guys. You talk to Vietnam guys, they just left. I mean, there was no, just take your shit and get out, and then Gulf War. They realized all these guys deploying and getting out quick. They gotta have something to get them into the civilian world working again.
Yeah, and with ACAP, they also tell you to apply for jobs and try to do interviews and whatnot. So my plan was to come back home, but I applied for this rock quarry job outside of Dallas, and I got the interview and whatnot, and I did it, and they said when you get out, you can come work for us, and I was like, okay, that's cool. What I don't have any plans on staying in Dallas or in Texas in general, but I mean, you're gonna pay me this. I mean, why wouldn't I? So go through. I finish up my time in the army, and I go to get my DD 214, and basically you go in the morning and you're with a bunch of other people that are getting their DD 214s, and you do some paperwork and stuff, and they make sure that all your checklists are good, and then once you're done with that, you go out and sit in a room, and it felt like forever. I sat in that room, just sat there, waited, and they would call people out and hand them their DD 214, and it was the funniest thing. While I'm sitting there waiting, I'd watch these people and they'd get their DD 214, and then they look at the lady and they're like, "What do I do now?" And the lady's like, "You're free to go." And they're like, "Go where?" Like, wherever you got to go.
Yeah, people don't understand you that you're cut off.
Once you get
You are
that DD
you're
214,
done.
it's on you now. You got to figure the shit out.
But you basically had that job lined up.
But
You were
yeah,
ready to
so
go.
I had that job already scheduled out. Like I already knew the date that I was going to get my DD 214 as long as everything went right. And so I got my DD 214 that Thursday when they handed it to me. And so I already had an apartment and everything outside Dallas already ready to go. So I got my DD 214, walked out the door, got my truck, and went straight to Dallas. And so once that was over, I went there and I worked for a while, and I kept wanting to go back home. I was like, Dallas is not for me. I'm not used to a big city. I want to go home. So put my 2 weeks in there and came home once I had enough money saved up that I could drive home and get an apartment and stuff back home, and then started looking for jobs around here, and then I landed the job that I still work for to this day and whatnot. But it was kind of a culture shock when I got my DD 214, because it's like I'm free, but structurally in my mind, I was so used to the army way of being told where to be, what to wear, and all this and that. And then becoming a civilian, obviously, my whole goal was to get back to the civilian world. But being in the army for that many years, you kind of get into a routine that you're used to, and you don't even have to think anymore. You just show up here and do your shit and then go back. So that was kind of a culture shock, is that I can make my own decisions. I can wear whatever the fuck I
But you
want.
kind of miss it, right? You kind of almost miss the structure, it gives you a little bit of not leniency, I guess, but like you don't have to
I wouldn't
freak out.
say that I miss the structure. It's it's kind of with the army, it's more of everything is laid out for you and you don't have to worry about nothing. And you go from that to the civilian world where nothing's guaranteed.
Yeah.
You like me when I was in, I was a single soldier, so I had a barracks room. I didn't have to pay bills on it. I didn't have to worry about nothing. I just had to be where I needed to be on time, and I was usually 99% of the time I was golden. As long as I'm in the right uniform and on time, I'm golden. You get to the civilian world, you got to worry about bills. You got to worry about putting food on the table for yourself and whatnot. And it was kind of a little bit of a culture shock. I'm like, oh shit, I gotta go buy fucking groceries. There's not a defect. There's not
Ain't
anything.
nobody cooking meals. Ain't nobody.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I gotta pay this electric bill, or I'm not gonna have electric and whatnot. So it's kind of a little bit of culture shock. But I mean, it also helped me when I went in with the mentality this is the end goal. So I knew that shit was coming up.
Yeah, that's more unique for your situation,
Yeah,
I guess, as towards everybody else. You were like, this was what I wanted.
yeah, I wasn't freaked out, but it still was kind of a little culture shock because you go from the structure to you're on your own. It took a minute to adjust, but it wasn't. I know there's probably some people that it hit them hard because it's like, oh shit,
Oh yeah. Oh
because
yeah.
they didn't have the same mentality that I did. But it was still a little bit of a shock. And I mean,
What do you say you would? What do you say you would miss the most?
I miss absolutely nothing
You
about
don't
the.
miss the bros,
Oh, that
the
I was about to say
camaraderie.
that's the only thing. I said the army sucks, but the people that you meet in it,
100%.
other than like you and Vince and stuff, those are my boys.
Yeah.
Like we
And
still talk to this day. A lot of them are still in and whatnot.
you
And then
build a very
yeah,
strong bond that you'll never build with other people at
it's a
all.
lot of people don't understand it, but I mean, other than the people that I met, I miss. I mean, I respect the army. I mean, I did. I went through it, but I miss nothing
Yeah,
about it.
there's
The
and
only
there's no harm in that. There's
no,
no harm in not
I mean, a
missing
lot
it.
of I don't tell a lot of people that I hated the army and I only used it to learn a skill. But I mean, it's I mean, it helped. It helped a lot, like turning me more into a modeled citizen, I guess you could say. Because I mean, before I joined, I was just a big partier and whatnot. But I mean, it taught me a lot about taking pride in your work and
Bro, bro, listen, it's
whatnot.
so many people joined for taking a job for benefits and then going to a better opportunity.
Well, no,
No one
that's
should,
like in the
no one
civilian
should
world.
lose
That's
out
what
on
you
that.
do. Like when
Exactly.
you interview,
Exactly.
like when you interview for jobs, you're looking for the job that'll pay you the most and also give you the best benefits. And sometimes you take a bit of a pay cut because it has better benefits.
And a lot of people now, it's a big trend. I just heard somebody talking about it, either on a podcast or something, but they were talking about how the big trend now is to not have a 30-year career at a job. You take the 5 years of experience and you build on it to keep getting better positions, which is what the military does in general.
Yeah, and that's basically what I did. I mean, with the company I'm with now, I started off in asphalt, and this company does a wide variety of things: asphalt, dirt work, and rock quarry stuff. So I started off in asphalt and went as high as I could with it, and then I transitioned to dirt within the same company, went as high as I could with that, and now I'm on the rock quarry side, and I just got up to a supervisor of a rock quarry, and I can go further with that. So it's basically, I mean, the civilian world in companies is basically the same as kind of the army. I mean, you're trying to advance yourself to get more money, and with that comes time in the position that you're in. Just like if you're a private, you're doing that time to get to the next rank, to the next rank. In the civilian world, a lot of jobs, that's the same. It's the same basic principle. You're starting out low and then building up to go higher and higher.
Exactly. Exactly. You're building yourself in their NCO positions is what's the next job I can get that's better for my career, blah 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 blah. And I think the army tends to almost overstress it because when you get out, most people are like, okay, I'm gonna work my ass off here. I'm gonna figure out where I'm gonna go next if I have a plan. The army, your first year at a job, right after that, you're like, okay, where someone to constantly be worried. Whereas a civilian job, you can kind of like, I don't want to say coast, because I know your schedule, you're not coasting, but you don't have to worry about like, okay, am I going to be here in 10 years? Am I going to be like, what do I need to do? You're just, if you work, you stay there
Yeah,
and you do good.
yeah. With the civilian world, it's it's a little different in this aspect. You can coast. I mean, in my job field, you can coast and do the same job the rest of your life, and you'll never get fired as long as you do that job well. Or you can advance yourself to get to the next position. Like when I interviewed for the company I'm with now, they asked me like, "What's your goal here?" And I was like, "I want my boss's job whenever I get hired, and then when I get his job later on down the road, I want his boss's job." And so you could do that or you could coast. And some guys, they coast. They just do the same job for 20, 30 years and they retire. And that's fine. But me, I want to make the most money possible in the fastest amount of time. And I can thank the Army for teaching me that because, I mean, when I was in, I didn't want to be an E3 or an E2. Obviously, you get promoted after a certain amount of time, but I wanted to make the most money possible while embracing the suck that it was. I was like, I'm not going to do this shit for bare minimum. I mean, at least I want to make the most money while I'm embracing the suck of it all.
Yeah, you're really just trying to in the military to get to that next level so you don't have to. Um, so what would you say like ultimately it sounds like, you're still to this day you are happy you got out.
No,
And the
100%.
and the biggest pro you took away, would you say it's that like that job ethic, like work ethic of trying to get to that next level? What would you say the biggest pro is?
The biggest pro that I got from it was that it got me a trade that I love doing, and it helped me advance that said trade without having to pay for it, basically. But it taught me how to structure my life and how to organize it, and like I said before, take pride in what I do and like just work my ass off to get somewhere. And it also like made me a better civilian, I guess you could say. Like anytime we have a time that we have to be somewhere, I'm usually there 10, 15 minutes prior because of the military taught me like you
Yeah,
got to be
that's a
10
big
minutes
one.
prior.
That's a
You got to
big
be
one.
10
No
minutes.
matter what,
You
yeah,
got to be
10 minutes to
10
the 10
minutes to
minutes.
the 10 minutes to the 10 minutes prior, whatnot.
And now you're the only one waiting.
Yeah, I'm the only one at the site waiting on people to show up who show up right on the dot, and it just drives me nuts. I was like, what are you doing? You show up right on time. Like, what? Like, you need to be here earlier. So I mean, most of you already know, to me, the Army sucks, but it taught me a lot of things that made me a better civilian, in all honesty. It made me a more respectable, in my eyes, civilian, basically, because, I mean, Obviously, I show up to work early. I work my ass off. And I mean, most jobs, there's shitty days. There are shitty days in any job you do. But it's a cliche saying that I tell a lot of the guys I work with. Like when we have a shitty day, and they're like, "Why are you okay with this?" I was like, "It sure the fuck beats the army, buddy. I don't know. What to say.
Yeah,
There's
there are so
there's
many.
there are worse
Like
days in the army than
there are
anything
so
this
many
job could."
days where you're just like, what the fuck is going on?
It's cliche. The
What is
grass is
wrong? Yeah.
greener on the other side. I was like, I was in the fucking dirt yard before I came over here. So there's not really that bad of a day because it could always be worse.
What would you say the biggest con is? The biggest bad part of
I mean, to me, the whole time I was in the army, I was a single soldier. And the army the army sets single soldiers up for failure. They make
How so?
they make barracks life suck. They make you hate it. You got to have room inspections. You get called out in the middle of the night because some jackass does something stupid in the barracks that has nothing to do with you. They make you hate the barracks.
Yeah, people
And
get
then
married
people
just to move out.
yeah,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
people
And
get
then the divorce rate
yeah,
is
and
crazy.
then they
And this,
wonder why fucking Private Joe Smo goes to the strip club and meets the first girl that gives him any attention because he wants out of the fucking barracks because they suck. They make
which
it.
is saying something because I know the Vickers you stayed out here. And they were nice. But the
But
Fort Hood ones,
Fort Hood
but Fort Hood, yeah, I know
sucked.
it's rough. I
You're
was at the JBLM ones up in Washington.
I
Knew a
mean,
lot of
don't
people
get
up
me
there, and I
wrong.
had bad
The
ones.
facilities weren't bad. It's just all the bullshit.
No, but barracks life,
You got
you got
cleaning rosters. You
dude,
gotta keep your rooms
I mean,
clean.
we're
You
being
got people
yeah,
coming in and out of your rooms, making sure they're clean and just bugging you.
bro. Broader than that, we're talking about not only what he's talking about, but on like having potential sharp cases, potential EO cases, potential assault. Like all this shit is going on in the barracks, and like that's to my point because now the NCO side, that's why there's so many freaking inspections. Is because people do dumb shit. Does it affect the good soldiers that aren't doing dumb shit? Yes, and I hate that for them. I hate that we have to do that. But these people that do dumbass shit, like they are ruining the formation by causing crazy stuff to happen. I'm sure you
Yeah,
saw it. Some
yeah. I
shit
mean,
good.
there's people that did dumb shit. It just to me, it just bugged me that you had to mass punish people. That's the one thing that I noticed in the army so much
What's
is
one
that
thing everybody hates too?
it's always mass punishment. Okay, dipshit over here fucked it up for all of you. Why? I'm sitting in my room playing video games. Why do I have to be punished for him having an orgy in his room? Why is that my fault? It just it just kind of sucks
Mm-hmm.
that they had to make the barracks life for single soldiers so rough. I mean, and I get it. You have to mass punish people and you have to keep the barracks under control, but that was my biggest thing is that they make it so hard to be a single soldier. They just make it so hard. And they set themselves up for failure with it because then you got soldiers going out and marrying the first girl that bats an eye at them.
Yeah, there's so many people that get married. So I mean, I say it quick. Me and my wife got married very quick, but there's so many people that get married not because they care about each other, but because they literally just want out of the barracks, and that's such a like it's such a sad thought because it leads to so many divorces, so many issues that pop up later on. So I get it, man. It sucks. Mass punishment and barracks life are two major concerns with the army still to this day. What are what's your biggest advice, good or bad, for these dudes listening that are about to get in? Um, what do you recommend to them?
if you consider going in, go in for your own reasons. Don't let somebody in the military or somebody in your circle convince you to do it a different way. Like with me, how I went in for a skill basically. Just don't be ashamed to go in for a different reason than the regular social norm. Like don't feel pressured that you have to join the military to be Captain America. If you want to go in there to get out of a shitty situation at home, or you want to learn a skill, or you just want to try something new, don't be afraid to admit it. I mean, in my time, obviously, I took a lot of backlash for my mentality on it. But at the end of the day, my end goal worked out pretty good because I'm doing fine now.
Yeah, and I love that message. Um, freaking 74 Delta, whatever.
Yeah, because the recruiters will do that. They will, because I understand the recruiters, they have a quota they have to make. So they're going to push people to get them in so they make their numbers. And they're also going to push the needs of the Army because obviously the Army's telling them, hey, we need these guys. Like, push for it, push for it. But if that's not for you, go in there and don't settle for anything less. Like, I want this. Because they, at some point, because I waited 4 or 5 months before I could go to basic because I refused to go for the needs of the Army. I wanted the job that I wanted. And if it made me wait a while, then so be it. But don't let them push you into something that you'll regret because they want to make their numbers and whatnot.
Yeah, 100%. All right, man. To close it out, I had Vince do it. Just give a solid for recommendation for good movie.
Oh
So what
boy.
gets you going?
Um, I mean, things that get me going, um, like for like the gym or whatnot, I usually watch like YouTube videos of the Majin Vegeta saga on Dragon Ball Z. That shit gets me
So
pumped
yeah,
up like crazy. That's my like go
so
to for gym. And then movie wise, I don't sound like a nerd, but I love anything with Batman. And yes, even the one with George Clooney, it's still
yeah,
Batman.
yeah.
But
The
it,
Bat. I never leave one without it.
anything anything Batman wise, I'm all about it.
I love it.
So I would say if you haven't seen the Batman with Robert Pattinson, you all can hate him for the Twilights, but he is one hell of a Batman. So I would say anything Batman related, that that's my shit. I'll watch that all day long.
Hell yeah. Well, Ryan, we're right at the mark. I appreciate you coming in. Thanks for getting on here. Hope I'll see you soon. Everybody listening, thanks for listening. If you did, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll be getting more out to you, and we'll be trying to pump more content out as we go along. Thanks for listening.